Welcome to the deep dive.
It's great to be here.
So, as always, our mission is to take that whole mountain of information you've gathered and really distill it down.
Right, into the essential takeaways.
Exactly, to give you the knowledge you need, but quickly and, thoroughly. And today, you've tasked us with, well, what might be the biggest question out there?
It's a huge one. We're exploring the profound, maybe inextricable relationship between physics, mathematics, and consciousness.
And for this, we're drawing heavily on the source text manuscript Entangled Realities II.
We are. And it really doesn't just leave consciousness as some philosophical footnote. It proposes that awareness is the crucial mapping variable, the piece that completes the whole equation of reality.
So we're not just looking at reality as this, closed machine to be decoded.
No, the idea is that it's a living equation we participate in.
I love that. And the text kicks off with this fantastic paradox that really sets the stage.
It really does. I mean, for centuries, science just assumed its tools, its equations, its logic were mapping some objective truth, the universe out there.
But the deeper we went, especially in the 20th century, the weirder it all got.
Exactly. The discoveries became unsettling.
You were talking about things like relativity and matter behaving differently just because you're looking at it.
Precisely. You know, when relativity curved space-time and quantum mechanics just fractured causality, this subtle truth started to emerge.
Which was?
That maybe the logical structure, the mathematical elegance we see, maybe it isn't a reflection of some alien reality.
A reflection of us.
A reflection of the contours of our own thought. The idea that the laws we observe are maybe, just maybe, shaped by our own cognitive structure.
Okay, let's really unpack that. Our own thought being the missing piece. Historically, physics and math have been collaborators.
Right, close collaborators.
Yeah.
But the source points out this critical split. Physics is always seeking verification through measurement. It has to be grounded in the physical.
Whereas math is pursuing this perfect, abstract certainty through proofs and logic.
And that separation, it just got wider as their foundations were challenged. Relativity, quantum uncertainty, and at the same time, logic itself was dealing with this devastating internal blow.
And it's right there in that gap, in that incompleteness, that the manuscript introduces consciousness.
Yes. Not as some optional extra, but as an unavoidable necessity.
It's the hidden variable.
That's the term. And the text makes these incredibly bold foundational claims.
Like what?
Well, it says 100% of physical experiments include an observer.
Okay, that seems obvious on one level.
Right. And 100% of scientific theories depend on consciousness for their formulation.
To be thought of in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, 100% of measurements reflect awareness.
Yeah.
It's the one constant.
That feels radical, though, because we spent centuries designing experiments to try and remove the observer's influence, right?
That's the whole tension. We tried to remove the observer, but when the conversation shifted to the subatomic world, that distinction between objective and subjective, it just became impossible to maintain.
Which is the core of quantum mechanics. You can't separate the experimenter from the experiment.
The very act of measurement changes what you're measuring. That's entanglement. The relationship is fundamental.
So if we're entangled with the cosmos at the deepest level, then reality needs a new way of describing itself.
And the manuscript proposes this new architecture, a triad of understanding.
The continuum.
Yes. So physics describes what is the things we can observe. Mathematics formalizes what can be all the abstract rules and possibilities.
And consciousness is the third point of the triangle.
It's the active element, the thing that perceives, chooses, and co-creates both. It's the witness that unites the material and the abstract.
So it's not a byproduct of the system, it's the bridge holding the whole thing together.
A massive intellectual shift.
And to get it, we have to look at the fragility of our language for truth logic itself.
We have to. We have to talk about the man who basically shattered the dream of certainty. Kurt Gödel.
Right, the incompleteness theorems.
So in the 1930s, he proved that in any sufficiently complex, formal, system-like arithmetic, which is underneath everything, you will always find truths that cannot be proven within that system.
Which is it's mind-boggling. It means if you build a perfect theory of everything, it will, by definition, contain true statements that its own rules can't prove.
It's like a map that cannot, by its own rules, fully map the space it occupies.
A perfect analogy.
You hit a boundary defined by self-reference, the classic paradox, this sentence is false. When logic looks at itself, it kind of collapses.
And the source says this isn't a flaw in the universe.
No, it's the price of consciousness.
The price of consciousness. Okay, help us translate that. Why is self-reference tied to awareness?
Well, because consciousness is self-reference. I mean, think about a computer. It processes data perfectly, follows its logic, but it doesn't know it's processing data.
I can't ask why.
It can't loop back on itself.
Yeah.
That ability to know that we know, that's the ultimate self-referential loop. We are the system that can observe its own rules.
So the very thing that makes us aware, our self-reflective cognition, is the same thing that guarantees our logic will always be incomplete.
You can't step outside the map because you are the cartographer.
Wow.
And what's so fascinating is how this logical limit runs parallel to the discovery of limits in physical prediction. It shifts us toward the mathematics of uncertainty.
Chaos theory.
Yeah.
Which sounds dramatic.
But it's really about an extremely sensitive kind of order.
Right.
You have Edward Lorenz in the 1960s running these early computer simulations of weather. Using deterministic equations, they should always give the same result.
Okay.
So one day he wants to rerun a piece of the simulation, and instead of typing in the full 6-digit number, he rounds it off from, say, 0.506127 down to just 0.506.
A tiny, tiny change. What happened?
The resulting weather pattern just spiraled into something completely different. That almost immeasurable difference at the start created this massive, unpredictable divergence.
The butterfly effect.
That's it. And it perfectly illustrates the point that chaos isn't the absence of law.
It's the abundance of sensitivity.
Exactly. The laws are there, but the outcome is so sensitive that it's practically unpredictable. The modern view from Gödel, Heisenberg, Lorenz is that uncertainty is actually generative.
How so?
A completely closed, predictable system would be static. It would be fixed. It couldn't produce anything new. These gaps in logic, in prediction, in measurement, they preserve the space for surprise, for emergence, for creativity.
So incompleteness is actually the engine for growth.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot that back to physics. If our own minds create the boundaries of logic, how does that change what we call reality in the lab?
Well, the source reminds us that physics is a translation.
A translation of reality into language, not reality itself.
Right. Measurement converts the infinite, the potential, into something comprehensible. But that act of translation is shaped by our own cognition.
And this is where the quantum paradox makes that subjectivity totally unavoidable. If a particle isn't observed, it's not really there in one spot.
It's in all possible states at once. Superposition. It's a wave of possibility.
And when we, the observer, interact with it,
we force that wave to collapse into a single, definite outcome. A particle. As the source says, observation is participation.
But that almost makes it sound like reality is just passive, just waiting for us to stamp our minds on it. Is the universe a blank canvas, or does it have its own structure we're just revealing?
And that's where entanglement really challenges that idea of passive observation.
Okay.
When two particles are entangled, their fates are linked instantaneously, no matter how far apart they are. It's a non-local connection, which suggests that separation itself is a convenient fiction.
Communion beyond locality, that's the phrase they use.
Yes. It implies the universe is this seamless whole, and we only perceive it as separate because of our limited, localized human perspective.
And this observer's dilemma, it goes way beyond the subatomic.
Absolutely. Every big advance seems to confirm what they call the veil of subjectivity. There's just no view from nowhere.
Relativity showed space and time depend on your motion.
Quantum mechanics showed existence depends on your observation.
And the text brings in cognitive science people like Anil Seth, suggesting perception is a controlled hallucination.
A controlled hallucination.
Yeah, meaning our brains don't just passively receive reality, they actively construct it from predictive models and sensory data. We're always generating a best guess reality.
So if our most basic perceptions are constructs, how could our highest physics possibly be purely objective?
It sounds like we're caught in some kind of cosmic feedback loop.
We are. And it aligns perfectly with what the physicist John Wheeler envisioned. A self-excited circuit.
A universe that's constantly informing itself.
Where the observer and the observed are in this perpetual dance of co-creation. Every measurement we make feeds back and shapes the very reality we're trying to measure.
Which brings us to the final synthesis. The idea that consciousness isn't just something that emerges from the brain,
but something much more fundamental. The source proposes we should see consciousness as a universal field.
Like gravity or electromagnetism.
Exactly. A fundamental aspect of reality. It's not generated by the brain. The brain is just a lens or an antenna that localizes and processes this universal field.
That is a bold leap. I mean, is calling it a universal field just sidestepping the hard problem of consciousness by giving it a new name? We still don't know how it creates subjective experience.
That's the critical challenge, absolutely. But the power of the analogy is that it restores a kind of symmetry. If consciousness is fundamental, then the outer law of physics and the inner observer consciousness are finally reconciled.
The architecture is unified.
Right. And in this analogy, the triad works together. The mind is the lens focusing awareness. Mathematics filters consciousness through its patterns of symmetry and number. And physics,
Physics translates that awareness into measurable motion and form.
which brings us back to that ancient question. Is mathematics discovered or is it invented?
And the answer, according to the text, is both.
A superposition of both.
A mathematical superposition. I love that. So the patterns exist in potential, like the structure of a perfect crystal. That's the discovery part.
And the human mind, with its cognitive tools, gives those patterns form, syntax, meaning that's the invention. Every elegant equation we write is a handshake between the universe and consciousness.
It requires both the potential structure and the observer to make it real.
And what triggers that handshake? Often it's not just calculation. The source makes this beautiful case for the aesthetic of truth.
Right.
Take Paul Dirac, a giant of physics.
Mhm.
He was working on his famous equation, unifying quantum mechanics and special relativity. But his math produced this strange result: negative energy states.
Which didn't make any physical sense at the time.
Not at all. But instead of throwing the equation out, he trusted its beauty.
He trusted its elegance and symmetry more than the immediate evidence.
Yes. He believed nature must be fundamentally beautiful. So he hypothesized that this negative energy must correspond to a positive energy particle with an opposite charge. This purely aesthetic pursuit led directly to predicting and then discovering antimatter.
So our intuition, our sense of beauty and symmetry, the source is calling that an epistemic force, a power that recognizes truth before the proofs can catch up.
The highest form of physics becomes a kind of poetry. It suggests our subjective sense of beauty is actually a highly sophisticated tool for recognizing fundamental truth.
Which leads us to the conscious equation. We're seeing theories now, like integrated information theory or IIT.
Right, that tries to assign a mathematical value to awareness called Gödel. It's trying to measure how much a system knows about itself.
But the text proposes something even bigger.
It does. That consciousness isn't just defined by an equation. It is the variable that defines and perceives all the others.
The system trying to compute itself.
The entire universe, in a perpetual state of self-calculation. It's not decaying into heat death. It's computing itself through uncertainty. The gaps that Gödel found, the surprises from chaos. Those are the open spaces needed for this ongoing self-reflective calculation.
This whole journey has completely reframed our relationship with logic and reality. We started with this idea of a universe with fixed external rules.
And we end up here, in a participatory reality where truth is dynamic and relational.
We've crossed a threshold where knowledge isn't a detached description anymore. We are literally the cosmos waking up to itself, using math and physics as its languages of self-expression.
Which means you, the person listening, you aren't just a separate observer. You're part of that self-excited circuit. You're contributing to the creation of reality just by observing it.
The ultimate final theorem, the source suggests, isn't written in symbols. It's written in the stillness of the awareness that reads them.
And if the universe isn't a solved equation, but an evolving consciousness disguised as one, then we have to think about how we use our tools.
So if every elegant equation we write is just a moment of consciousness seeing its own reflection, what happens when we use logic not as a rigid map that demands absolute certainty, but simply as a mirror, reflecting the structure of our own seeing? Where does inquiry lead then, when we fully embrace the incompleteness that allows for infinite creative possibility?